Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mental Health Family Hour. Now, we are back for another episode focusing on young people's mental health. So if you're new to this webinar series, my name's Sam Tyrer. I'm the Prevention and Engagement Lead at Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation Trust. I'm also the founder of a service called Change Talks, which is an educational program which key aim is to prevent mental health issues. So that's been delivered across Lancashire and South Cumbria and beyond since the start of 2018.
And I am Dave Cottrell, aka Mindset by Dave, a mental health educator, streamer, content creator, and sufferer of mental health, also living my life with type 2 bipolar disorder.
And we both are very open about our experiences of struggling with our mental health. And, you know, the focus of today's episode mainly going to be around anxiety, but we're also going to be talking about the lack of motivation to do any work and also the fear of losing a loved one to COVID-19. So we are going to open the chat box at the end towards probably about 50 minutes towards the end. So any questions or comments you do have, then you can type it in the chat box now. However, we won't be able to see them until the last 15 minutes. So don't click enter on it just yet. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me as well after the episode on sam.tyrer, Tyrer, at lscft.nhs.uk. So we'll go straight into the content. So how we normally run this, if you are new to it, is normally Dave is the podcast host interviewing myself. However, for the purpose of the webinar series, I'm more of the host and I'll be asking Dave a lot of questions. So I think the first thing we'll go straight into is talking about anxiety. And I know there's a lot of young people feeling extremely anxious at the moment. You know, I've had loads of young people contacting me, teachers and parents, where young people are anxious about planning the work, they're anxious about their assessments, they're anxious about COVID, whether they're going to pass it on to someone or whether they're going to get it themselves. And they're also feeling extremely anxious about the future. I've personally struggled with anxiety. So anxiety to me, okay, some of the feelings that I get: butterflies in my stomach, sweaty palms, feeling on edge. I might tap my leg a little bit, and you may be getting some of them feelings as well. So I think to first start us off, Dave, can you explain exactly what anxiety is, please?
Exactly what it is. We you know that it takes a full episode to do that. The quick version is anxiety is a mental and physical reaction to a perceived threat. And I say perceived threat basically meaning or threats, multiple threats, right? So it could be a perceived threat, usually meaning more often than not, anxiety, the thing that you're worried about, doesn't happen. That's really important. However, it's really important to know that it doesn't happen. It's also really important to know that to your brain, it doesn't matter if it's not going to happen. If you perceive something as potentially going wrong or could happen, our brain plays that out inside our own head, and we get the feelings as if it could happen. Or actually, possibly more correct would be to say we get the feeling as if it is happening right now. So what will actually happen is you'll then have the physiological reactions to it. And I know obviously we're working with primary school right the way up to the teachers and the parents today. So by a physiological reaction, what I mean by that is the type of things that Sam's just said, i.e., you get sweaty palms, you get your thoughts start racing, you maybe get a beating in your chest or butterflies in your stomach. Now, a huge important thing to note with that is that those same feelings are also linked to, they're also linked to excitement. If you're excited about something, then you'll feel butterflies in your stomach. You're like, I'm excited about this call today, and it's been a long time since we've done one. And as me and Sam have been talking about off stream before we went on, a lot more people are here today than normal, and even though I can't see them, we're aware that they're there. So because it's been a little while since we've done it, I'm excited. I can't wait to talk about this. And right now, that excitement feels a lot like anxiety. It feels very similar to anxiety. Right now, I've got butterflies in my stomach. Right now, I have to remind myself to breathe, to talk clearly, to not rush too far ahead, which allows me then to breathe a bit easier, to think a bit straighter, and then allows me to communicate a little bit better. But it took me a very, very long time to realize that sometimes excitement feels the same as anxiety. And if we don't know that, what we can do is the second we feel any of those pieces of feedback, we then go, I'm anxious about something. As soon as you click onto the idea that you're anxious about it and you become aware about the fact that you're anxious, your focus goes towards anxiety. And anxiety works very much like a circle, right? It's like it basically keeps itself going, right? So if you feel anxious, you begin to act anxious. When you act anxious, it makes you get certain results. So let's say you're anxious about not being able to talk to somebody. Like let's basically, make this about if I was worried about this call, right? So if I was really anxious to come out here and talk to everybody, and then I noticed those feelings and I went, oh no, I'm anxious. I hope I don't make a mistake. I hope I don't mess up. I hope that this doesn't go horrendously wrong. And even as I'm saying those things, you can probably hear the tone of my voice get a little bit more worked up. Then that happens and I start acting anxious. When I act anxious, I talk faster, or I mumble my words, or I make more mistakes. When I make more mistakes, I then start panicking about the fact that I'm making more mistakes, which makes me even more anxious, which makes me make more mistakes. And you can get where this is going. An example that someone else might be experiencing with that is if they're thinking about maybe fainting or anything like that, is if you think, oh, I fainted the other day, and now I'm thinking, what happens if I go outside and I faint and I'm worried? Then you start thinking, okay, I feel a little bit lightheaded. And when you feel a little bit lightheaded, you start becoming more conscious about your feelings and how you're moving. And then when you're moving, you start feeling a bit shakier in your legs. And the whole thing can actually cause you to faint in the first place. There's a quote from Kung Fu Panda I like to use for it, which is often we meet our destiny on the path we choose to avoid it. And we may as well kind of just dip into this briefly. Don't tell someone to don't. Right? Don't tell someone don't panic. Don't be anxious. Don't panic is one of the most, unfortunately, sorry for anyone who's ever said it, because I've said it too. It's one of the most useless pieces of advice on the face of the planet. Because if you say to someone, don't panic, they might not have even been panicking. And they go, well, I wasn't panicking, but like now maybe I should be panicking. And now, again, this can create that. Like if I was to say to you right now, Sam, don't think about a purple elephant. You're already thinking of one.
And you've got purple in the background, so it makes it much easier to picture it.
I've got purple. I am a purple elephant, to be honest. But yeah, don't touch wet paint. Ooh, let's stroke the wall. So that's what anxiety is. It is a reaction to a fear. Sometimes we are aware of what that fear is. Other times, that fear has been there so much, or is coming from so many different sources that we're not quite aware exactly of what we're worried about. But it is a physiological reaction to it. So you start getting these internal signals, and then the signals increase the fear, and then the fear increases the signals, and so on and so forth.
So now, Dave, I basically want to just give you some certain scenarios. So I'm basically going to act as a young person who's struggling with anxiety, and I would like you to basically advise me on what you think I should do to reduce those anxiety and anxious thoughts.
Okay.
So I'm a young person and I'm extremely anxious about planning my work for school, and I'm anxious about the assessments when I return to school. And it's making me feel really sick at the moment, and I can't really concentrate because, I feel like I'm getting sweaty all the time. I feel like I'm panicking. So what exactly can I do to help myself?
Okay. So first of all, when you're anxious about all that, everything happening in school, you're not thinking it's all going to go well, are you? You're thinking it's all going to go wrong. And this is important because, okay, and I'm going to explain this in terms of YouTube, because kids use YouTube, right? Every single one of them. Basically, when we watch something, like, okay, let's say you watch your favorite movie. Let's say you love Avengers Endgame, and without giving away any spoilers, that bit with the thing where the thing happens, right? You know what I'm talking about. You don't, because you've not watched it, which I don't know how we're still friends, but
I have watched it.
You've watched it now, yay!
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's say you're watching that movie. Movies make us feel things. We know that, we know that Captain America doesn't really exist. He's a cartoon character, comic book character, action hero, right? We know he doesn't exist, yet we can get extremely emotionally invested in watching him in a film, Like when he loses a bit, then comes back to win again. We love it when they lose first. If they just win straight away, we don't like that so much. We like it where they lose a bit and then they come back to win. That makes us feel something. If we watch that and we invest in that, if we watch for the adults watching that have watched The Notebook or something, you know, the people in The Notebook are fictitious characters, right? Who we've just watched the story of, and by the end of that story, we're in floods of tears. So our brain doesn't need something to be real in order to have an emotional reaction to it. Fantasy, this is why books work or games work or videos work. We don't need something to be real in order to have an emotional reaction to it. Which is why when we then watch up here the worst case scenario, then we have an emotional reaction to it. So the first thing to note is that when I say it works like YouTube has recommended videos, and YouTube has an algorithm. The algorithm learns what you like to watch. So if I was to flick over to my YouTube right now, I watch a lot of tutorial videos. I also watch some Marvel stuff, and I watch some other streamers, right? So in my recommended is more than likely going to be all of those things because I sit and watch those things. YouTube learns what you like. And it learns what you like by how much time you spend watching it. And this is the thing with anxiety. Your brain learns to think negative or to think positive based on how much time you spend watching either of those things. So, and here's the big problem. At first, the worst case scenarios will come up in your recommended videos up here way more often than the best case scenarios. And there's a good reason for this, right? There's something called negativity bias, which means if something can hurt us, it makes more sense to pay attention to it than something that can help us because we want to avoid being hurt. If you think back in time to cave people, you know, like the ones that went up to pet the saber-toothed tiger because it looked like a cute kitty, got eaten by the cute kitty and didn't have children. Whereas the ones that went home, locked the doors, sharpened the spears, got the kids safe and protected themselves from it because they noticed that it was a threat, they went on to produce children, which, you know, a million years down the line became us. And that's why it's built into us. It's built into us to keep ourselves alive, to protect ourselves. So it's built into us to pay more attention to things that could hurt us than things that could help us. So you're going to get more up here. Your brain is going to go, what if it all goes wrong? What if this happens? What if I sit in my exam and suddenly my brain goes foggy and I can't think of anything? What if I go to speak to my teacher about needing an extension on my coursework and I can't say anything and I can't get my words out? What if I go to ask the girl out in class 5C and I'll lose my nerve and so on and so forth, right? It's always what's the worst that could happen. Anxiety is fueled by what's the worst that could happen. And that's why when we play the worst case scenarios up here, we feel as if the worst case scenarios are happening right now. Okay, so we feel as if the worst case scenarios are happening in this exact moment. And that's the same as what I said before about watching a film. When you watch a film, you feel the emotion that's there. But now you're feeling the emotion that's not attached to Captain America or I can't remember the name of the characters of The Notebook, but Bridget Jones. we're not like attaching emotions to them. I'm thinking it must be so sad to be that person right now, or it must be so exciting to be that. We're thinking this is me. This is happening. This is exactly what's going to happen. And then what we end up doing something called double suffering. So double suffering is where the event can happen, right? But we can also suffer in the lead up to the event. Now, as I said at the beginning of this call, more often than not, the event that we're worried about doesn't happen. The problem with anxiety is that it causes us to worry about that event happening so much that, let's say you're worrying about an exam that's in 6 weeks. You can spend 6 weeks suffering and then you can turn up at that exam and it might end up being fine. Like, listen to your parents. I know that's such a cliche, but ask your parents about how they felt 6 months after their exams, even 6 days after their exams sometimes, you know. We soon forget that all of that, the thing that we were anxious about. We sit there and go, what was I even bothered about? What was I even worried about? And this is important as well because we can only suggest that perspective to our kids. we can't force it on them because we've only got that perspective because we've lived beyond the anxious experience, and we can look back and go, what was I worried about? I can't believe I worried so much. But what the kids can do now proactively is to actually change the channel up here and basically go into the search bar, and instead of going, what's the worst that could happen, go, what's the best that could happen? Think about that exam. And we did this on the stream on Tuesday, where I basically got a bunch of people to look at themselves succeeding at something, to watch it from the outside, and then to imagine being in the person that is doing that. And a bunch of adults, of varying ages, from their 20s to their 40s, we're all like, oh my gosh, why didn't we get taught this in school? And it's like, and basically what you do is you play the best case scenario. Now, an important thing to note about this, and this is why I talk about it in terms of YouTube, you have to think about what the best case scenario is, and you have to create it as if you're designing it, as if you're telling the story yourself. The worst case scenario will populate in your head automatically. And you're really good at it because you've been practicing it probably since you were old enough to worry. So since you were maybe 4. The best case scenario, which is thinking of how it could turn out, the best way it could turn out. So let's go back to the analogy I said before about me sitting and thinking, right, what if this goes horrendously wrong? What if I lose my way in chat? What if I die, blah, 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 blah. Exactly. As soon as I start saying that, I'm already losing my words. Now I sit there and I go, right, okay, what if this goes really well? What if we impact the lives of hundreds of kids and parents and teachers? What if we help reduce anxiety across the country? Even if it's just by 0.5%, even if it's by a small amount. What if this show has the ability to impact people? What if, and what would I feel like if that was the case? What would it feel like to know that that's happening? And that's what you want to do about the exams. Okay, you go, okay, what's the best way? Right, okay, if you've done your studying, the best way to be ready for an exam isn't to cram in more studying and to panic, which your brain's going to push you towards because of anxiety. It's to relax, to calm yourself, to slow your thoughts down, and to because everyone who's ever experienced anxiety will know that it clouds your mind. It stops you from being able to access things that you know. You know the answer to that question, but anxiety is like a cloud over that question. So the answer isn't to run out of the exam, find your textbook, get the answer and run back in, The answer is to calm that anxiety, to bring it down. So, okay, imagine yourself in that exam. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself sat in that exam, calm. Imagine yourself, imagine confidently writing the answers. Imagine the feeling of going through that paper, going, oh, I know this one. I know that one. Oh, I'm feeling good about this. Imagine the thought about the satisfaction of completing that test, knowing that you did the best you possibly could do. Same with your coursework. When we do the anxiety only episode, we've got that little image where it says what anxiety wants you to do is prepare. What it causes you to do is panic. The best thing we can do is, and I said before, don't panic is terrible advice. The best thing we can do is don't panic, but we don't focus on what we don't want. We focus on what we do want. What we do want is to remain calm. So instead of what can I do to not panic, what can I do to increase my calm? Because when you calm down, when you get yourself into a better emotional state, which is what watching that video of you doing well will do, it'll shift you into an emotional state. If you're in an emotional state where you feel like a superhero rather than you feel like you're incapable, everything you read will go in better. Everything you hear, you will understand more. Every piece of studying or piece of homework you do will be better because the emotional state that you bring to that table is a state of confidence and is a state of calm, is a state of control. And parents, by the way, you can totally do this too. It's not just for the kids. As I said, we did it with a bunch of adults on the stream the other day.
And if I'm really anxious, Dave, say my anxiety is at a 10 out of 10, is there anything else that I can do in that current moment to bring it right down?
Where's my juggling ball? Okay, a 10 out of 10, actually, we won't go with a 10 out of 10. A 10 out of 10, no. Because a 10 out of 10 of anxiety usually pushes over into a panic attack. In a panic attack, it's that often has to kind of just be rode out. A big old hug from your parents and reassurance that you're okay, and reassurance that you are loved and cared for and that there is someone there for you is probably the best thing you can offer in that moment. So that's for a 10 out of 10. I'm going to use a little Among Us character, which some of the adults will be, what on earth is that? But most of the kids should know what it is. I've got a little purple. Obviously, it's purple. One of my stream community, Helen, crocheted this for me, and we've got one that was unlucky over here. So I'm going to use this today because I've got a spiky massage ball over there that really hurts my hands. So this is by far the number one trick I know for anxiety. And what it does is it reduces anxiety almost instantly. Anxiety, as we've just talked about for the last 20 minutes or so, it relies on that storytelling, those pictures, those images, that concept of what's the worst case that could go wrong, Now, that uses the language center of our brain. And the language center of our brain is in one hemisphere of our brain. I can never remember which one, so I'm not going to say I know which one. And then the movement center of our brain is in another one. If anyone's ever done yoga, this is one of the reasons, should I say, that yoga works really well at reducing anxiety. Or if you've ever tried to ride a bike, or you've ever tried to learn equipment in the gym, all of these things, playing an instrument, when you're having to focus on your movement, right, it requires energy from a different part of your brain. And your brain is very much like a processor. It has processing power that it can distribute between tasks. And if you're asking it to distribute, when you're anxious, your brain is processing all of that. It's all of the processing power has been sent over to telling you the story to keep you anxious. So what we do is we actually create some movement. We create a bit of movement. Now, yoga works for this. It's great. But this one's super simple, and you can kind of just get away with doing it, just sat in a room, as I'm hopefully going to do now. Best way I can describe it is imagining a Newton's cradle. Newton's cradle's that thing with 4 or 5 steel balls that, as one goes, the rest of them stay in the middle, and then they close, click, and they go out to the side, click. They're like that, basically. We're going to create that movement with something soft. Don't use your phones. Do not, under any circumstances, use your phones for this, because you will drop whatever you're using. You will drop the first few times, and that's okay. And what you're going to do is you're going to create this big sweeping motion. So I've got the thing, which is me Among Us character here, nice and soft and squishy. Big circle up. When it comes to that hand, you swap over, and then big circle the other way. This one now stays still. Big circle, big circle. Right, okay. The hand that's got the thing moves. The hand that hasn't got the thing stays still. Right. Within about 30 seconds, that's going to bring your anxiety down from a 9 to a 5. It's gone. I nearly jumped into some Dolly Parton there. It's gone from 9 to 5. What a way to make a living. But yeah, so it'll drop down. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go back to those thoughts, which you're going to say, but Dave, you just told me not to have those thoughts. Okay. In this exercise, we go back to the thoughts. What were you thinking about that was making you anxious before? That's going to take your anxiety back up again. Sounds like a really bad idea, but it's not, because it's going to take it back up to an 8. And then once it's up to about an 8, you're going to get your ball or your Among Us character or your Satsuma, whatever you've got lying around. And then you're going to go off again for another 30 seconds. Now it's going to bring it down to about 4 or 3. And you're going to repeat this process. Work it up, bring it back down, work it up, bring it back down. When I've taught this to people, I've had someone that went from 9 to 0 in 2. So that was a whole minute's worth of work. 60 full seconds worth of throwing this around. Went from a 9 to a 0 in 2 goes. And the most I've had it done so far is a 7. That doesn't mean that someone one day won't come along and do it in a 1. And it doesn't mean that someone one day won't come along and need 14 tries to get it right. But the main thing to make sure is that the movements are smooth. Okay, because if you're like erratic, this is what the anxiety is going to want you to move and I've just dropped it. There we go. You've got to take the control, making it smooth. What that then does, processing power goes from your language side of your brain. Processing power gets requested by the movement side of your brain, and then because this has got nothing to process with, it it switches off. The anxiety switches off, and there's such like seriously, I can't emphasize so much how people should try this, because it's one of the most profound and surprising things ever when you do it. I did not believe it when I saw someone demonstrating it, and then I volunteered to that person to teach it to me. And they were like, does anyone want to have a go at this? And I'm like, well, I don't believe it's going to work, so I'm going to have a go at it. And oh my gosh. I still use it now, like if I need to. Probably should have used it for that little bit of excitement I had at the beginning of this call, so I'd have been calm.
I should have used it beforehand as well.
We should have done.
I think it's really important for those watching that you do try these things that Dave is educating. You know, it's all good to sit here and watch and think, oh, that was good, or rubbish. You may not enjoy it. However, please do take action and try these things, because they do really, really work. So, Dave, I want to just flip this now, and I want to look at this from a perspective from a parent wanting to engage with their child who is feeling extremely anxious. I've had a lot of parents contact me, and they've basically said that their child is struggling with anxiety. However, they will not open up the conversation about it. Okay. However, it is obvious. So how can the parent approach that? And just to say as well, we have done a full episode on communication, which does touch on all of these things. So that's episode 2. So you can find that on YouTube as well. However, Dave, could you answer that, please? Yeah,
and there's a full episode on anxiety, which is episode 1 as well. Okay. Right. So sometimes the best things to do in terms if someone's not opening up about a specific topic, like we always say, ask twice, which sometimes, like, you know, ask again. Are you sure? So like I'll do that with my kids. I'll say, like, you know, if something's happened in school or out of school as it is now, right? It like basically, I'll be like, are you sure you're okay with that? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'll be like, you know, you can tell me if you're not, and so on and so forth. It's a bit of reassurance goes a long way. If they're not opening up about that, and they're just not open up in general, getting a child to talk about something. Although, should we tell everyone this? The kids are going to now hear this and go, I know how my parents are trying to get through to me. Kids are clever like that. Let your parents get through to you, please, is a message for the kids. But if you ask them about something that's not related to their mental health, get them talking about anything. I want to link this into what we've just talked about with the best case scenario. Ask if you can tell your kids are feeling anxious about something, or not so much anxious as well. The other thing is they can be feeling ineffective or incapable. It's a big thing that can actually lead to anxiety around schoolwork in particular. If a kid's feeling incapable of a particular topic, for example, ask them to tell you about a time that they felt like they were like really winning. Now that might be on a game of Apex Legends, you know. You learn the following words: Apex Legends, Overwatch. This is for parents. Learn what games your kids are playing. Like, I don't mean like you need to know them and go and play them yourself, but like if you can know what the game is and sort of roughly what it's about and what they have to do to win to a degree, then because that's an area that your kids might feel like they're successful, right? And this is good. Computer games can be used in a very positive way because they actually do promote this feeling of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy means basically believing in your own abilities to do things. And the way computer games work is they start off easier, unless you're playing against other real people, but they start off easier and they get progressively harder. And if your kids had a really good game of that, or if they've had a really good season on Stardew Valley which is a farming game, and you might think that your kids don't want to play a farming game because why would they ever want to work on a real farm? It's not the same. It's way more fun. If there might be something that they felt like really good at, if they got to the bottom of the mine on Stardew Valley, for example. These things, in a similar way to creating a false future where the best case scenario is the case, this takes your child back to a time that they felt like they were doing well at something. Ask them to tell you how they felt, what they were thinking, and how that made them feel and stuff. Because by doing that, it brings the memory into to now. Like asking them to tell them about a really good experience with one of their friends, it could be like a time that they helped a friend out, or a time that they felt successful in school, or a time that they mastered something in horse riding, or whatever it might be. Like there's, whatever your kid's particular interest is, ask them to tell you about a time that they felt really good about that. What that does is it causes them to get out of the anxiety that's there. Now, important thing to know about this is that is a temporary solution to that is fixing the kind of the feelings that they're having at that exact moment. And this is the idea of this is that's like, it's like your first aid, basically. You're doing your first aid, which is you're getting the anxiety that is presenting itself right now under control and dealt with. Then the second part of that is obviously when the kid's feeling better and able to talk about it, then you maybe then start asking questions about other parts of things, and then try and talk them through that thing that we've just talked about. So say to them, how you felt when you were when you got that win on Fortnite. I know it's almost a banned word in most households now. I didn't get that. Oh, Siri didn't get it either.
Don't like it.
Siri doesn't like Fortnite. It's not an Apple product. That's the problem. But yeah, so if even if it's something like that, I might tell them imagine how it would feel to have that same level of victory in the thing that they're worried about. So utilizing it's like basically bootstrapping one emotion onto a different experience. So you take the fact that they've got these skills and abilities in areas that you as a parent might not see as skills or abilities, which is fine. But you take that and then you attach that feeling to their ability to handle other problems. We could argue all day about the pros and cons of video games, but there's been a lot of studies that show that they're good at helping problem solving, they're good at spatial awareness, they're good at hand-eye coordination, they actually do have some things that basically translate into real life. But then at the same time, they're also so awesome that you never want to come off them, so you never actually get round to real life. So there's pros and cons, but use the pros of it. Use the pros of it. It's something that your kid's really into, and might convert that into something that they're struggling with.
And just to let you know, parents watching this, I do not have a clue about any of those games. So you might be like me, just sitting there nodding and smiling at all these games that Dave's talking about, and I do not have the foggiest. So I just sit there and go, yeah, I agree
Sam,
about that game.
Don't think you won't have to. Don't think that you won't have to know this stuff because you've got a girl.
Yeah. Well, I know.
All my mods in this chat right now, except for Mounty, are girls that play games.
I've got it all coming. So just to say as well, I have suffered with really bad anxiety in the past, and I'm very, very open about it. Over this last year, I've personally had sort of real waves of anxiety, and that's okay. If you are feeling anxious, that is okay. So things that have worked for me personally, I need a routine. That's something that I really do need. So even when I'm off work on annual leave or something, I make sure I keep to a routine, because often when I'm doing nothing and I might just be sitting there all day, my mind wanders. So I do like to keep that routine. It keeps my mind fixed, keeps me occupied, and it keeps me going. I reduce the amount of time I spend on social media or watching the news, because that can really trigger anxiety, especially if you're a young person. You may be, posting every single day, you may be taking selfies, doing whatever, and actually that could be causing a lot of anxiety because you're tuned into how many likes or follows you're getting. So if that is something that is triggering your anxiety even more, reduce the amount of time that you're spending on these applications. Are you also, as well, are you sitting down all day? Dave spoke about the benefits of gaming, but there's also the negatives. Where are you actually just sitting down all day long, every single day, playing on your phone, sitting on your games? Because actually you might have a lot of pent up energy there, and it's really good to get out and move, get away from your screens, have some no screen time. That is really, really important. So I just wanted to sort of touch on some things that personally work for myself, but I really do think a big one for young people at the moment is minimizing the amount of time they spend on things like social media, because that can really trigger anxiety for young people. Yeah. So Dave, moving on from
while we're on social media, I would actually just say not necessarily minimizing it in total on terms of all social media, but again, get to know what you can get from different forms of social media. So when we were having this conversation a year ago, Like I hadn't even started on Twitch and stuff yet, and I didn't have a clue what Discord was. And there are ways in which there are social medias in which you can actually build true communities and you can become part of something. And there is Discord as well, which is a great way to kind of, especially now, because obviously I know we're going to talk about like ongoing fears during lockdown and stuff, is that might be the way for people to connect and stuff now. And one of the big pieces of advice that we've talked about when we did the social media episode is making sure that social media is a tool that you're using rather than a tool that is using you. You know, make sure if what you're going on social media for, be mindful of why you're on there. If you are going in and checking your number of likes or your number of or whatever, and that is making you feel bad about yourself, then minimize that. But at the same time, like if you're going on there and you've got a chat group that you speak to and that's your way of getting communication and interaction and feeling less isolated now, that's what you want to use it for. And another kind of very quick note on that, especially like, is Discord. Sam hasn't got a clue what Discord is, I don't think.
No, I'm not smiling again.
but in Discord and with streaming and things, you can if you don't like any of the communities that you come across, it doesn't feel like you belong there. You can create your own communities based on your own values and based on the things that are important to you. And you can do that with things like Discord. And I know a bunch of teenagers that either are part of Discord servers or they actually host Discord servers themselves. It's how my kids are staying connected to their friends, and they've done schoolwork together. With a Discord voice chat open, for example. So it's kind of like they're there and working together and stuff. So it can be very much used for positives. The important thing is the important thing is down to how we use these things, right? Video games aren't inherently good or bad. How we use them is. Social media isn't inherently good or bad. How we use it is. We are using social media right now in order to create this, in order to actually get this information out to people. So this is one use of social media.
Excuse me. Sorry.
It's all right.
Just to touch on as well. So for the young people watching, where I do advise having no screen time is when your parents want to talk to you, they want to have a conversation with you. When it comes to tea time, maybe sit down together at the dining room table and have no phones at all. Now, as a young person, especially reflecting on my own experiences, I wanted my phone in front of me all the time. I used to say, shut up to my parents, you get a bit ratty with them. And, I've done that to people that are no longer here anymore. I lost my nana under really bad circumstances. I remember when I was a teenager, she wanted to talk to me. I was really ratty, sitting on my mobile phone on MySpace, it was back then, and Bebo and things like that. I wish that I put down that phone and paid attention to her because unfortunately, things did happen. So actually, them conversations are so important. So don't act out in anger or frustration because you want to be sitting on your phone scrolling all the time. Just put it down for a while. So as Dave said, follow positive pages that make you feel good and just remove all the negative ones. There's also
really
another episode.
Mindset by Dave.
There also is an episode on social media and self-image as well. So moving on, Dave.
Yep.
This is one that has come up from a lot of parents and pupils. So they've basically said that a lot of young people are struggling with motivation. They've got a real lack of motivation to do any work. So what can you advise young people there?
Yeah, it's really difficult because try and put yourself in your kids' shoes and understand that because it's so easy to think, oh, they're just being lazy. If you see that. But if you think there's an expression, if a plant isn't thriving, you change the environment, not the plant. I talked to my kids about this last night in preparation for today as well, and that's my kids are 15 and 13. So one of them's in year 11, one of them's in year 9, but both of them for slightly different reasons have that same that motivation to do the work. They do the work because it's prescribed to them and stuff, and but the motivation to do it, and especially on the subjects they don't enjoy. So for Joe, it's like he said to me last night, home learning just isn't as good a learning environment Like, I miss being around my friends. I miss having the teacher that I can ask things. And like, if you ask them on Teams, it's like they, it's if they've, it's hard to get the response in the time that you want. But it's also learning a different style of communicating with your teacher as well. You used to kind of like being able to physically show them the book and sit there with them and have that face to face. It's different for them, and it's hard. And any parent that's ever tried the difference between home learning and being at university, I did my nutrition qualifications with home learning, but with university visits like 2 or 3 times a year. And the difference when I was there, I was just in learning mode when I was there, and like I just that was where the focus was. It was an environment that bred for like good learning practices. So our kids have kind of been pulled into a situation right now where they're kind of what they're used to. Now, we deal with everything by comparison as well. So if they'd have been homeschooled from day one, we wouldn't know any different. And therefore, it probably, the motivation thing probably wouldn't be an issue. But it's the fact that it's not as motivating or it's not as easy. Now, that I don't talk about motivation. I talk about momentum. Motivation is, I need this spark of inspiration to come along and to get me up and out and doing things, right? Momentum is, how am I doing based on the work I've done so far and how I feel about the work I've done so far. So if you take 6 weeks off for your summer break, you come back with no momentum, right? I say, like, there's an expression, when you're tired, learn to slow down, not stop, because like fully stopping, it's essential sometimes, but fully stopping removes that momentum from you. So first of all, be understanding to the kids, like that they're in a situation like where things are more difficult for them right now in comparison to what they know. Okay, it's like, put your hand up if you've said, oh, can you imagine what it would have been like if it had been like this when we were kids and we didn't have the internet and we didn't have all these things and there was just no teacher. I think I've said that. Maybe not those exact same things, but it's that's not useful to our kids at all. The fact that we didn't have the internet back then and they do now, it's not useful to them. It's and then especially if we then start treating them like they're ungrateful or they don't appreciate what they've got there, this is only going to drag the momentum down. To the kids that are watching, or young people, because if you're 16, you don't want to be called a kid, do you? Understand that. Okay, so understand that momentum is down to a couple of things. It's very much down to how you talk to yourself. So your momentum is dictated a lot in portion by how we speak to ourselves. If we look at something and we say, why can't I do this? That drags your momentum down because it assumes that you can't do this. Now, if you were used to being in a school and saying, why can't I do this? And the teacher hears you say that, they'd be there in a heartbeat. If your parents heard you say that, they'd say, of course you can do it, just try your best and all the rest of it. But if you're saying that to yourself all day and no one's responding to you, the only person that's responding to you is you. And guess what? You're not your own best friend. You should be, but you're not. When you say, why can't I do this? You'll be like, because I'm lazy, because I'm bad at maths, because I'm blah, blah, blah. And then when you tell yourself all those things, it drags your momentum down even more. So again, it switches you into that emotional state where you're unmotivated, you can't be bothered, you're lackluster, you just don't want to do it. And then the work becomes harder, right? So what you need to do in this situation is say, how could I do this? Like, how could I do this? And, if that means asking for help from your parent, that's one thing. If that means going and using YouTube tutorials on things, I know you weren't allowed to do that in school, but right now you need to if you had a teacher to ask for those things in school, like YouTube tutorials on what you're trying to do. We actually had it in my group chat last week when I was on the Tuesday, when I was streaming on the Tuesday, and my youngest came in asking about ratios, and my community on Twitch taught him how to do ratios, which was good because I don't remember how to do them. And that's the whole thing, is like, so you can, it's like, okay, how could I get this information? What can I do to make this easier? Like, are there any additional resources I can access? Is there anyone I can help? These, like, asking these type of questions. Is there a friend that understands these things in Discord? Again, going back to using social media productively. Is there a friend that is better at maths? Because again, if we say, why can't I do this? We usually follow it up with what's wrong with me. And if it's a subject that you struggle with, you're going to have a belief in your head that I'm no good at this topic. I'm no good at science. I'm no good at maths. I'm no good at languages, whatever it might be. If that is your belief about yourself, can you imagine going over to sending your teacher a thing on Microsoft Teams going, oh, I'm really struggling with my French work. And the teacher came back saying, of course you are. You suck at French. It's like, that's going to make you better at French, isn't it? But your teacher would never say that to you, hopefully. Teachers, if you've said that to children, I'm coming through this camera and I'm coming for you. I'll probably just kind of give you a hug when I get there, because I'm quite a nice person, really. Try to be intimidating, and then I'm like, what would I actually do when I got there? I'd be like, hi. But yeah, seriously, if you're saying those kind of things in your own head, we know the impact that trolls have on us. We know the impact that people putting us down has on us. So we're putting ourselves down. Take it one step at a time. Take it one step at a time, and then be happy when you've succeeded at something. This is super important. I call it baby steps and happy dances. When you've taken the baby step, which might be a huge step, by the way, be happy for yourself. Be proud of yourself for the fact that you've done it. Like, be like, yes, I've done my maths. Now on to my science. Like, that's what Joe was like last week. He was like, oh, once the maths was done, he's like, yeah, I've done the maths now. And now I've only got my geography left to do, and geography's easy. Like, geography's easy for him. I found it super boring when I was at school, and therefore wasn't really interested in it. So, you know, we all have our own different strengths and weaknesses, but repeating to yourself that you're bad at something will keep you being bad at something, because the second it confirms the thing that you're worried about. The second you struggle at something, instead of going, how can I do this? How could I do this? You'll just go, well, I can't do this because I'm bad at that. And if you believe that, you're always going to be there. One extra note on it. This is specifically to year 11s, because they're struggling a lot with motivation right now. If you get the time to do this, think about what you want to do in college. You've probably already put your college application in, so you probably already know what subjects you're actually you're applying for. But think about what you want to do in college, and actually start watching YouTube videos and stuff on that topic. Get interested in it, get excited about it. My 15-year-old wants to do movie directing, so it's like, I'm like, go and watch Tim Burton talking about how he made the Batman movies back in the 80s, and go like and because. Okay, kids, I wish I could see you put your hands up for this. How many of you have said the following thing? When am I ever going to use this? Like, probably about
I'll represent.
Probably about Pythagoras. When am I ever going to use Pythagoras in real life? When am I ever going to use whatever it might be in real life? Okay, if that's your argument, go and learn some of the stuff that you want to use in real life. If that's your argument, I know that might be me being very reductive and very parenty right now, but if that's your argument, okay, cool. If that's the reason you don't want to learn those things, go and learn something that you want to use in real life. Whether that is picking up a guitar, picking up a paintbrush, learning an Adobe product, like learning an Illustrator product or a Photoshop type product. You don't have to use the Adobe ones. There are free ones, by the way. So like, if you think, oh, well, I can't afford an Adobe one, there are free ones I think it's called Canva and something else. But there are things that you can do, and again, like, this is from a parent's perspective, right? And I said to Sam at the beginning, I want to any English teachers watching right now, I am about to make up a word. Okay, I apologize if that upsets your English teacher sensibilities. I want to talk about something called regret. Right? Okay, regret is one of the most useless things on the face of this planet. We regret the things that we didn't do. Usually we regret them. And this is where most parental/teacher advice comes from. We don't want our kids to make, in fact, hands up if you said, I don't want my kids to make the same mistakes that I made. Yeah. Sam's already thinking it. He's like, and how old is she? 9 months?
5 months.
5 months. So, and he already doesn't want it. He doesn't want her to make the same mistakes that he did at 6 months. Don't burp at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It'll change your entire life. So yeah, basically, we don't want kids to make the same mistakes that we made. Now, sometimes, first of all, our perspective comes from making those mistakes. So it's a bit of a catch-22. We can't talk them out of it. But what we want is we don't want our kids to have the same regrets that we do. That's what it's really coming towards, because regret's no fun. So what I want you to do as a child or as a young person is I want you to think about, in 6 months' time, what you wish you'd done more of. In 5 years' time, what do you think that you wish you'd spent more time doing? And that might be spending more time speaking with your family. It might be. It might be, I wish I spent more time like learning how to stream. Like, for example, I know a lot of young people are getting into streaming now. It might be, I wish I'd spent more time hanging out with my friends, or it might be, I'd wish I'd spent more time learning how to paint. Whatever it might be, whatever you right now want to be good at, or you think this is what I want to do in the real world, just basically imagine what it'd be like in 5 years' time if you hadn't put that time and effort into that thing. Because you'll sit there and you'll get there's a reason. My parents didn't want me to go through the same struggles that they went through. Their parents didn't want them to go through the same struggles that they went through. I've been told when I was young. My mum got told when I was young. My nan probably got told when I was young. You're getting told when I was young. And it's the thing is, it doesn't work, right? Kids know this. Adults kind of know this, but we have hope that it's going to work. So instead, I would say get ahead of that. Think about what you want to do. If you're in year 11 right now and the type of work you're doing isn't interesting you, still try and get that work done and get yourself a bit of extra time in the day if it's possible. If you've not got live lessons for the full time, like my eldest has got, he worked out last night that he gets an extra hour each day, plus then the school run time. So he actually gets like an hour and a half extra each day from when he wakes up to when his school day is over. And so I'm now encouraging him. He's not done it yet, so it's not worked yet. But this was a conversation we had last night. So he might be doing it right now, actually, for all I know. But I'm encouraging him to think about, okay, right, what do you want to learn in college? Why do you want to learn that? Here's some resources for it. YouTube, I've mentioned it before again, it's a social media platform. Stay out of the comments section. It's evil and vile. However, in YouTube, there are tutorials for just about anything these days, literally, because ultimately adults who want to build a channel that is successful know that to be successful, you have to find out what people need and you have to provide value. That's it. That's what I'm building my channel on. I'm building my channel on mental health care. That's it. That's all. Some people build channel on how to do woodworking, how to put motorbike engines together. I learned everything I know about streaming from watching, and have everything I know about Photoshop and Premiere Pro and editing my videos and how to light my room, which, by the way, if I didn't watch things, would look like this. I learned things like how to do that, how to make my room look good, how to make my sound look good, and all that stuff from YouTube videos, because I was something that I was super passionate about. Think about the thing that you're super passionate about. Go all in on it. Like, spend your extra time going all in on it. Like, because what you're going to find is that, like, what you want to do, chances are there's hundreds of other people your age that want to do it. And if you're working hard to perfect your craft and enjoying it's important. And enjoying it along the way, when it comes to the time that when you go to college in next September, which hopefully you'll be going to physically, and you're back in that environment, you're going to be ahead of the curve. You're going to understand various concepts better. Therefore, you're going to be able to take on what happens easier, and you're going to enjoy it more, and you're going to get more out of it. And because now we understand that school is what we tell you should learn. College is supposed to be about what do you want to learn, unless your parents are still telling you what you should learn.
Perfect. Can we open the chat box, Dave, as well, before we go on to the last thing?
Yes.
So if you've got any questions,
chat box, please.
If you've got any questions or comments, then do put them into the chat box now. If you don't want to ask them whilst we're live, you can email me again. We're just going to go into the last point now that I mentioned at the start of the episode. Fear of losing a loved one to COVID-19. So there's many young people at the moment that are extremely worried about losing someone to the coronavirus, whether that's a parent, a family member, a friend. So how exactly, Dave, would you advise these young people to reduce those fears? And it's not just young people having these fears, it's adults as well.
I understand. This goes right back to what we talked about at the top of the episode. You're thinking about the worst case scenario. Therefore, you're playing what it would be like to lose that person in your head. And that's creating the fear now. It's not going to change whether or not, and it's not going to change what actually happens with that person, but it's going to so that person could live, hopefully will live for another 30 years. My mum has COPD and diabetes. I'm terrified of what would happen if she gets it. And the rest of the family all got it. We've all just kind of got over it a few weeks back. And we saw my mum 2 days before we started getting symptoms. So we had that very real sense of panic around that. My mum was fine, she didn't get it, but the rest of us did. Now, okay, actually let me go about it in a different way, because when we've just had it now, both me and the kids, one of the kids didn't have any symptoms whatsoever. Sam had some light symptoms. I had moderate symptoms, and then my wife, who is by far the on paper fittest and healthiest member of the family, it floored her. And when when the symptoms were really bad, what did I do? I went and looked, when's the appropriate time to go to hospital? I've never seen her suffer like this ever, and she is by far the strongest member of this family. So that scared me, seeing her like that. Then when I went and read all the articles about what's happened after 10 days and all of this stuff, I had to put my phone down, and I had to do some serious anxiety calming stuff myself, which thankfully, obviously, I know. I was terrified. And now the thing is, there's an expression that we talked about on the stream on Tuesday, which was where focus goes, energy flows. My focus now suddenly went exactly towards the worst case scenario. My energy now flows towards where that focus is. Me thinking that would not have changed anything that happened with Alona. If it had gone the other way, then me thinking that wouldn't have caused it, right? At the same time, me thinking hair getting better, me thinking that hasn't caused it. So basically, I'm going to say, first of all, think about the best case scenario again. Think about that person in good health. Think about that person, think about basically that person, being well and doing well and just being in good health the whole time. And then if even that, because health anxiety is a little bit of a slightly messier version of anxiety in the fact that sometimes thinking about health whatsoever, whether it's good health or bad health, can still cause the same anxieties. If that is the case, it is okay to distract yourself with other thoughts and to think about other things. I can't say don't think about it. What I can say is do think about something else and take your focus to something else. So, me and Alona, after I'd read that, we sat down and watched the film Soul, the new Pixar one. So that was what we did basically, and we didn't read the news, too much of the news, because the news just tells you all the worst case scenarios, right? And that makes you then fear more, and so on and so forth. The other thing I would say is tie this into what we've just said about pre-gret, right? Okay. One of the things you're worried about is the fact that you're going to lose this person and you never got the time to really spend time with them or get to know them. And I know we can't spend time with our extended family to the level that we want to right now. But if it's your grandma or something, give your grandma a call. Give your grandma a FaceTime or something, she'll love it. You'll love it. And this is the one of the biggest regrets people say when people die is I wish I'd spend more time with them, or I wish I'd okay, that's useless to us when we've already lost the person. But if we know that that's something that we might feel, spend more time with them. And then if they live for another 30 years, great. If they live for another 70 years, great. You've spent more time with them. There's no downside to it. So yeah, spend more time with that person. If however is safe to do so. And whenever your thoughts go to that person being ill and being unwell, think about them in their best possible health. And then it will, as I say, it won't change their outcome, because, but it will change how you feel about it. And that is important, because there is literally no point in like you suffering as well, you suffering with the anxiety on top of that. There's no point to it. You're not a bad person if the person is really struggling and you kind of and you imagine them feeling well. It doesn't make you a bad person.
And talk about it.
Yeah.
I think you just open up these conversations. If you're having them fears, talk to, your loved ones, your friends. Having these open discussions will really, really help. So I think in regards to talking about, we've spoken about them three main things that I mentioned at the start of the webinar. So we're just going to open it up now to the chat box. If there is anything, I can't see it on my end. So it's Dave.
There is. I'll try and. I've still there's a lot. Okay, they're all okay. So.
Just to say as well, I know that it is coming to 11 o'clock. So if you can't continue to watch the webinar live, then I will be sending in the recorded version out afterwards. Dave normally uploads it more or less straight away, so it'll be out this afternoon.
Okay, so we've got the first question is, I am an 18-year-old youth worker, which I am passionate about. This is my first experience of a webinar. You've opened my eyes to a lot of things and I have lots of notes. I love learning about mental health. Thank you for all your support and info. Thank you very much for that. And I'm glad we've been of help. And I would also say if I can ever be of any personal assistance to you as well, please do let me know. I love the fact that you're doing youth work at 18. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, we started with some anxiety tips. What if your language center isn't processing anxious thoughts anymore? You still have the physical anxious feelings. Okay, so your language center will be probably processing them unconsciously rather than consciously. So like whenever we have that underpinning feeling of anxiety, but we can't quite place our fingers on why, that's your unconscious mind that's actually doing that, which basically similar sort of thing. The unconscious mind, I would recommend a book called The Chimp Paradox about this, which basically talks about the different levels of our mind, and our unconscious sits deeper than the conscious part, and it can be worrying about things without us even knowing it. This is why young people can have anxiety before people can have anxiety about things that happen to them before they have memory. It's possible. So their conscious mind doesn't remember it. I work with people all the time that their conscious mind doesn't remember trauma, but their unconscious mind does. It's very, very common. The juggling ball tricks thing will still work on there. Chances are, though, if that is the case, I'm more than likely going to be therapy, would be the answer to that. There's something called timeline therapy, which is quite good, especially if it is something that you're anxious about that happened before your conscious mind was able to kind of start making memories. Timeline therapy is often good for that. And yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy is quite good for that. And yeah, that's what I'd recommend there is kind of still work with the juggling ball, which should look like the juggling ball being what I did with the Among Us character, by the way, sorry, because I didn't have a juggling ball today. But still work with that. And that should work on the immediate effects. But if that feeling's there, kind of basically humming away in the background, which is what if you read up on generalized anxiety disorder, that's generally kind of what's going on there, is there's something humming away in the background, that anxiety's still there. But another thing that will happen from the juggling ball is your brain will start to realize, oh, anxiety doesn't always have to go this way. And the other final thing is going back to that thing from the very beginning, saying, ask yourself, am I anxious or am I excited?
Good question.
Yeah, very good question. Sometimes parents react badly to what the kids are saying when they are opening up. When a kid is not opening up, how can parents find out whether their child learned they can't open up to the parent or whether they don't feel confident to open up? And what can parents do if their kid fear the parent won't react well? Okay, another great question. There might be some reassurance to be done. There might be a kind of, as a parent, sit there and think about kind of what your reaction was to someone last time they opened up about something. And the thing is, by the way, this goes both ways, by the way, because most kids, what they consider to be a bad reaction in a parent, isn't. There's a scale to bad reactions, right? Not all bad reactions are outright abuse. There are abusive parents, and I've unfortunately had to experience that. But there are also parents that most parents actually don't know that what they're saying affects their kids in a certain way. So like I've probably told the story before about like I've learned so much about being a parent from working with people that have had bad parents. If I had not had certain things pointed out to me about their parent, like what happened with their parents, I'd have probably carried on oblivious in some of the things that I did. I was never a bad parent, but some of my responses. So the prime example, years ago when my son told me about his bullying in primary school, he explained what his bullying was, and I was horrendously bullied in school, and I made the comparison, which is not good. It's not a good thing to do, but I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that by saying that's not, I didn't say outright that's not bullying, this is bullying. I said, you know, like I basically, when he told me what he was going through, I was like, well, here's what I went through in school. Like, and immediately what that's doing then is validating his experience, because what I'm doing is putting my experience up here and putting that there, which I now know is an absolutely terrible thing to do, but no one tells us that. Like, you know, and also, and so that's one side of things. And the other story I often tell is about the person who came home with an A on her maths test and then told her dad that she got an A on her maths test. And her dad turned around and said, yeah, we know you're good at maths. What did you get on your English? And she got like a D on her English. So like she literally went into a life. This is someone I spoke to when she was in her 40s. She'd gone on with a life of perfectionism and was never happy with anything that she ever done. And this, when we did the timeline therapy, the thing that I mentioned before, or should I say timeline coaching, because I don't use the word therapy because I'm not a therapist, but we use timeline coaching to talk about, to basically figure out where that had come from. And it had come from that moment. And again, I was like, oh my gosh, that's something that I've said to my kids as well, is like, and I thought I was being nice. You know, I thought that I was basically going, oh, you know, I know you're great at maths. Like, what did you get on your English kind of thing, you know? I started with a compliment. You're great at maths. And this is the whole thing, is that kids do what I call hearing. Actually, not just kids. Ignore that. Every one of us does something that I call hearing between the lines. You know, you get reading between the lines when you're reading something. Well, I say hearing between the lines, which is someone says something and we hear something that they're not actually saying. Kids do that a lot. So when I would say to parents, assess how things have gone in the past about your kids open up to you. Think about those things. Some parents will be watching this right now and be probably kicking themselves for the fact that they've said something similar to what we've just said then. I know I was when it was pointed out to me. Doesn't make you a bad parent, just means you didn't know. You're doing the best job you possibly could at the time. And I know that now as well, looking back. I was doing the best job I could do at the time. But that doesn't mean that we can't do better still. And as for the kids out there, if in the past you've opened up to someone in the past, tell them that when I told you about this, you said that and it made me feel this. Right? Tell them that. Help parent the parents. And
I think it's really important. It's really important to add, if you really feel like your parents don't want to listen, or they've shrugged it off or whatever, and that's making you internalize all these feelings, find someone else that you trust. That could be a staff member, for example. It could be another family member. Don't internalize all these feelings and thoughts. Try to find someone that you feel will listen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% Choco Soy Milk says, how do I deal with minor anxiety? I'm going to guess that you've tuned in late. This is going to be available on YouTube tomorrow for the earlier stuff. We spent about 30 minutes at the beginning, literally talking about different ways to deal with anxiety. But the quick ones I would say right now is, one, whatever you're anxious about, think about the best case scenario of it rather than the worst case scenario for it, and it'll put you in a better position to be able to actually handle it.
There's a full episode on it as well. We've mentioned previously, if you're still watching episode 1 of the Mental Health Family Hour, it's all about anxiety for you to learn more.
Yeah. Okay. Someone said, I have friends who have panic attacks. How do I help them? Okay, so normally panic attacks, if the person's not put off by physical touch can be really, really helpful if that's safe and possible to do so at the moment. I don't know, obviously, where you are in the world and what your kind of COVID restrictions are and so on and so forth. The best thing you can do is remind a person that you're there for them, and that you're there for them however much you need, whatever they need, basically. Remind them that they're not weak. Remind them that they're really strong. Tell them that they can handle it. Reassure them of that. Breathing exercises work extremely well with panic attacks. However, they're very difficult for a person in a panic attack to engage with. So you might have to be slightly forceful with it. So say to the person, try and make your breathing slower. And I would say 9 times out of 10, probably more like 99 times out of 100, the person's going to say, I can't. And then you want, so then you want to be like, you can, just even if it's by just 1%, slow your breathing down. And then and then when they do that, say, right, can you make the next one even slower? Make the next one even slower, and keep them doing that. And then once they've got it quite slow, say, look, you control that. You are in control. Because a panic attack, one of the recurring thoughts that, not always, but often would be, I'm not in control. I can't control this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm not in control. That's what it'll be. That's not me exaggerating. In fact, that's probably an under exaggeration about the speed that thought is going around inside the person's head. It's probably gone round in that person's head to the point of which it's almost like a noise now and doesn't even have words to it. But what you can do is prove to a person that they are in control. And also another thing, a bunch of people in my community, I've not tried it myself yet, but a bunch of people in my community swear by weighted blankets as something. I've not heard a bad review of weighted blankets yet. I've not heard someone say like that they got it and it didn't work, didn't like it. I imagine it probably wouldn't work with someone who's got claustrophobia, but I don't know. But weighted blankets have been, a lot of people have said are quite good for that.
Not heard of that before.
Every time I go into a live lesson, I'm really anxious. Is there anything I can do to prevent or help manage my anxiety? Yeah, good question. And
just to say, you're not on your own. Anytime I do a live stream, I'm anxious beforehand as well.
You should see him in the 10 minutes before we come on.
Yeah, I'm very open about it.
I'm also anxious, but I hide it better. Yeah, you're normal. Yeah, it's perfectly normal. Try and flip it around to saying that you're excited. Like, I know we said that at the very top of the thing, but like saying, I'm excited. If I was to say to you, what are you anxious about that happens in the lesson, you'd probably be like, what if I'm kind of called on and I don't know the answer, and so on and so forth. These, again, we're going back into the worst case scenarios here. First of all, if you're called on and you don't know the answer, that's fine. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that, but that's fine. You're in school to learn the answers, and anyone that puts you down for not knowing yet, that's no bueno. But basically, it's fine if you don't. But fixating on the idea of what if you don't know the answer. Imagine me having the thought, what if we open up Q&As at the end and I don't know the answers? If that's what I was thinking all through the 45 minutes leading up to the Q&A, I wouldn't have been able to engage with Sam to the level that I am. So basically, here's my tip for that, right? If I don't know the answer, I say I don't know. That's it. I call it my get out of jail free card. If people ask me questions about something that I don't know, I just say I don't know. So like, for example, I'm qualified to talk about stress, anxiety, and depression. I'm not qualified, even though I have bipolar disorder. The only qualification I have to talk about bipolar disorder is my own experience, and not everyone's experience of bipolar disorder is the same. I'm not qualified to talk about things like borderline personality disorder or anything like that. So if someone comes in and asks me a question about those things, I say that. I say, I've got no personal or professional experience in that. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? So like in those situations, think about what it is that you're actually anxious that might happen. Now, as I said before, anxiety wants you to prepare. So if you're worried that the teacher will ask you questions that you don't know the answer for, maybe do a little bit of extra reading before the session. But ultimately, go back to that juggling ball trick that we talked before, which will bring the anxiety down in that moment, and go to the best case scenario in your mind.
I think, Dave, we'll go for the last 2 questions if there is 2 left, just because I'm conscious of people's time now. Otherwise, we're going to go well over.
Someone said cats also work great. Yeah, that's true. We talk about.
I'm a dog person.
I'm a dog person as well. But see that Totoro that's got a Jack Skellington mask on in the background. That thing's super fluffy, and I brought it over to show someone on camera the other day, and I was sat here stroking it. I realised, honestly, it was beautiful. Yeah, I think that's it. Actually, that's it. We're actually up to date with the questions.
Perfect.
Mental Health Family Hour and 13 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. So the Mental Health Family Hour will be returning on the 4th of February. So we have some episodes coming up that are going to focus on one is on suicide, one is on postpartum psychosis, another one will be on yoga and mindfulness, and there will also be one on becoming a new parent as well. So once again, thank you very much for your support. The Mental Health Family Hours really gained momentum over the last couple of months, so please do share the recorded episode. If you want to join my mailing list, then email me at sam.tyrer, Tyrer, at lscft.nhs.uk. And this will be, sorry.
Would you like me to copy that into chat briefly?
Yes, you can do.
I apologise for the fact that I keep on putting Baby Yoda on screen because I'm trying to change windows here. But I'll bring Sam's email address up and put it in chat.
I know all the episodes that we've already done are on YouTube. So just type in Mindset by Dave, Mental Health Family Hour, and you'll be able to see all the webinars that we have already done. So once again, thank you for your questions and comments. And if you want to ask anything afterwards, just please do email me. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. And we'll look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Absolutely. There's Sam's email in chat now for anyone who wants it. sam.tyrer@lscft.nhs.uk. Baby Yoda alleviates anxiety. You heard it here first, folks. Yeah, we've also got that in there. Baby Yoda does alleviate anxiety. He's so cute. And yeah, the Mental Health Family Hour there's a full playlist of it on YouTube, so you can actually watch all of the episodes there. And my YouTube link has probably been coming up all the way through this episode, but it's youtube.com/mindset by Dave. Which I've literally just butchered trying to type in. Hopefully that'll work. There are obviously other videos on there as well, which you're more than welcome to use. There's meditations to use on there. There's more of my own personal story on there as well, if that interests anybody. And I would obviously encourage people to subscribe to that channel because I put out 2 mental health videos every single week on there. They're about 8 minutes long. Which is obviously a lot shorter than this, and we try and deal with one specific topic in a kind of bite-size kind of way. And then obviously a lot of you have already followed over here on Twitch today, but we have a mental health drop-in chat every Tuesday from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. as well, which you are all 100% more than welcome to.
Got to plug it all at the end, haven't you, Dave?
I don't normally, but I just felt like it today.
Perfect. So thank you very much for everyone's time, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again in a couple of weeks' time.